Well, hey there, Crosskart fans. Today is one of my favorite days. It's driver fit up day. I'm going to use my typical NRG seats. I've had them for a long time. I've been using them. I know they work, so that's why I'm using them. I considered for the two-seater getting some reclinable racing seats, but I can't find any that I like. And these just hold you in place so well when you're driving crazy and drifting and jumping. They work really well for me, so it's hard to go with something I don't know when I have these around. So it's pretty simple. I'm going to change it up from the last ways I've done it. I got some 1.5" angle iron, and I'm basically just going to hole saw cut these, put it between two bars, and mount the seats up. What that's going to do is allow me to sit the seat 1.5" lower because this tubing is 1.5" thick. Typically I mount it on top to make room for the nuts and bolts, but this will give the option to mount it on bottom. On top, you can go inboard of the seats brackets, or you can go outboard of the seat brackets. There's a lot of modification options and mounting options when you use this kind of stuff. So let's get started with the extra headroom I gave on the VF2 chassis. I was considering getting seat sliders. That would let more people drive. It would just make it more versatile, more variable. All right, so first things first, I'm going to get some measurements off the seat itself so I can order the correct seat sliders in case I need them. This already has ground adjustment, if you will, not on the fly. You can unbolt them and change the actual position. So I'll work from that too. I'll find the most forward hole and most forward hole, take a measurement, and that's going to be the spacing for my bolts. It looks like it's 9 7/8, probably in millimeters. I'll get an overall length so I make sure they fit between the mounting bars. I bought two 48-inch pieces of 1.5" angle iron, so I'm just going to cut these in half, make 4 identical pieces. That's going to square everything up, and it's also going to make it super easy, and I'm not going to waste any material. All right, so to hole saw cut the end of this, we're cutting through 1.5" tubing. We're using an 1.5" hole saw, and we need to half that by half. 3/4 is half the hole saw, so half of 3/4 is 3/8. So I'm going to mark 3/8 in, and then I'm going to mark halfway across, which is 3/4 of an inch. It's right there. Then we'll make a quick hole punch, or a quick punch in it. Then we'll take it over and hole saw cut it. And there you go. I'll probably just trim this piece off, make them all uniform lengths, but as long as we follow that formula of 3/8 in and 3/4 up, all these are going to match. So wash, rinse, repeat for all 4 of the bars. Now, with both of our pieces cut, it's a matter of just making them the same exact length. I'm going to line up the hole saw cuts, and I'm just going to lop off this bottom part. The goal is to make them the same length, so this is 3/4. This side is also 3/4. Transcribe. Cut it off. All right, so I got the driver's side here. We'll just do a test fit, make sure we're on the right track. Now some of you are guessing, or have already guessed what we've done here. What we've done here is made an additional set of cross members. Cross members make things very, very strong. By sandwiching a fish mouth, you're making a cross member. And there we go. So now we're just going to pull these back out, and we're going to make the actual attachments for the seat itself. That looks good. All right, so here's what I'm running into. I want to mount the brackets inboard like this, so the seat sits like that. These are accessible from the outboard sides. This is possible, but there's very little area to put a bolt through this bottom bracket. This yields more space. The center of the holes are offset towards the inboard side. Now if I do that, towards the back, it's running into the seat. Seat brackets would probably offset it more, so I don't have to trim as much off. Now the whole point of this being angle iron is so we have this for rigidity. If we cut this out, it's going to make a weak spot in it and it'll be vulnerable to bending. I'm not too keen on doing that just yet, and I don't have the seat sliders to make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the bracket and mount it on the top side, tack it in, and then when the seat sliders get here, cut it loose, flip them. Seat bracket will give more clearance. I'll trim it for the seat and we'll move forward from there. But I really want to get these seats mounted today and find a good point for them, so I'm just going to do that. Alright, so here's the clearances we're checking. We're checking the seat to the exhaust. I'll run it as close as you want. That is, looks like 1 3/4 inches to 2 inches. I'm going to put a firewall in this like I do the other ones, which soaks up all of the heat. So that'll work out great. Checking the head clearance, which there's plenty. There's plenty of head clearance, even with it sitting on top. And I'm checking my brackets to see how they're clearing everything underneath. So the next step is drilling holes in my angle iron that will be universal for if I flip those brackets to have it sit down lower. And last thing we're checking is separation from the passenger and driver centering. Alright, so now that we've got it positioned where we want, we need to mark and reference our little cheat sheet. We got to crawl up under here and mark the center hole or third hole back on the front and back row and verify with that if you're using these 9 7/8 of an inch. All of this is just measuring, verifying, remeasuring, adjusting, measuring, re-verifying. It's just a bit of a tedious process, but I love it because I'm fitting it exactly to me. All right, so now I'm just going to tack the outboard side in. Now, since it's a two-seater, I have 2 seats, which means I have one to take measurements off of. I'm going to use this second seat to figure out how deep into the bracket to drill my holes. All I'm looking for is a starting point for clearance. And that's it. This is basically our hole. This is the inboard boundary. We'll probably shoot for somewhere like right here to give plenty of space. All we're doing is making templates for the rest of these pieces. So it's super easy. All right, let's pop this dude out. Now let's see what I have here. So here's the start and end of the bracket. Here's the third hole. All I have to do is measure 9 7/8, and that's third hole to third hole. You can see it makes sense on the bracket. Then all we have to do is measure from the end to the end, match that to the other side, drill our holes, and the seat will be mounted. All right, here's the piece we measured. Looks like we're going to go in 1/2 inch. All right, so here we go. Seats are mounted, and I can actually get in this without taking the wheel off. There is a cross member that goes here, but when that's in, we'll have to take the wheel off to get in. But let's talk about the seats. Seats are super comfortable. I've got total view of where I need to be. I've got tons of headroom. So that's, I don't know, at least 4 inches, 5 inches. And this is mounted on top of the bars. You can see I've got my off-road booster seat in there for my special someone. But let's check out the passenger side. Passenger side, super comfortable. It's crazy. 2-seat Crosskart is crazy. I couldn't imagine sitting over here while me over there is driving this. So the only thing I see as far as the seat mounting is that these two are touching right here. But that's why I just tacked in the mounts. I can shift this over 2 inches and I only need like a 1/2 inch. So, and there's shifting here, e-braking going on. I'm gonna be sitting like this. I shouldn't be in the way. And my clearance over here is a ton. You can see how much room I can move this seat over. That'll be in the revisit of the seats. Let's move on to the steering. You can see how I did all this stuff. All right, with the seats mounted, we can turn our attention towards the steering setup. Now, it's pretty simple what I use. This rack is a 5/8 36 spline, so I get a 5/8 36 spline, 2 3/4 inch double D shaft, and then I run a 3/4 double D to 3/4 double D. These are fairly inexpensive, and we may end up using 3. Now the only thing I don't like about doing the steering setup is that you really only get one chance to get it right. Once you cut this, you can't add any material, so it's kind of nerve-wracking coming up with a final layout without wasting any material or having to start over or buy a new shaft and wait for it. So we're going to be very methodical and meticulous with exactly how we're going to mount this. Alright, so first things first, we're going to get all the components to put the steering wheel to the shaft. I've got a wheel here. It's in the components list that I compiled. I'm not sure, it's like 230 millimeters, something like that. But it's got the 6-bolt pattern on the back, so I have an adapter that goes from 6-bolt to 3-bolt, and this 3-bolt is the quick release. This will get welded to the shaft, and there's your quick release. Now, I was lucky enough to have a QA issue and one of the bolts were missing, so we'll just use 2 for today. It's a 5/16 18 pitch bolt, so I'll just go to the hardware store, grab a 3rd one when I get a chance. But these holes in the adapter are small. I believe there might be for M8 or M7, so we're going to drill these out real quick so we can get a good pass through. There we go. All hogged out. Should be easy to get them in now. Now, on these, there's an outside bolt pattern and an inside bolt pattern. And you'll have to line it up to see it uses the inside bolt pattern. We'll need to mount the adapter to the quick release hub, because once we get this on the wheel, we won't have access to these holes. There we go. Ready to go. So now we just attach the hub to the steering wheel. Now before I do that, there is a member of the KJ Racing VF1 and VF2 Facebook group that makes these. So get on the group and he might make you one too with your own custom logo. He's a great guy, huge supporter. He sent me these and I can't thank him enough. These things are so cool. We'll sand them off, get a little paint on there, and we'll get rid of this flash power. Look at how cool that is. That just sets off a build right there. Nice. Now we are completely ready to go. Now, before final assembly or before I run it, I definitely will Loctite all of these bolts. They come loose very, very easily, so I suggest using permanent because you'll never have this apart again. I'm just keeping them loose so I can pull this off and get some paint on there. Alright, so we've got our dash panel here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a measurement. The dash core support, if you will, is 20 3/4 from the main cross member. Now that's kind of a low steering position for me. Yeah, I like it more about right there. And I'm also going to mark where I want the wheel. Yep, so 23 is our number. Oh, it's my number. You may have a different number because this is all modular to fit you. Now, considerations is if you can reach buttons that are going to be on the dash. Now, this seems like it's maybe 2 inches too close to me. I'm going to need a little room for my adapter, a little room to offset the dash. That's going to put the wheel pretty close, and I don't want it that close. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 inches off of here. It's pretty easy. You can reprint the cut wrappers, or you can just measure this angle with a protractor and just trim off your 2 inches. I left this long to accommodate everybody. So maybe you like the NASCAR position. Maybe you're going to be doing enduro races and you don't want your arms to get tired from driving like that. Now, measuring angles with a protractor is pretty simple. You get one of these, you line up the long arm and the short arm down the center line of the tube, and then there's 3 numbers it spits out. There's 60, 120, and 30. So it's a 30-degree angle to cut it at the cross section. Alright, so here's the easy math lesson for you. How do we reduce the angles between these two heims? Extend the hypotenuse. So what I've done is I've switched this entirely around, and I've got this U-joint running right against my piece so I can adjust the angle of this, and then I've got this running down. And the angles are greatly reduced. Now we're going to have to cut this loose and angle it towards this a bit, but you can see the angles are significantly reduced for our steering. Alright, so that worked. We don't have any more binding at all. It's wonderful. But this Sweetman ball steering support shaft, not cutting it. Even with our steering support, it's mounted too low. That's ball also. So this is just wiggly. So our options are to put another shaft support in here so that we have 2 in a row. But I did something on one of my single seaters that I still like to this day. It's pretty sweet. I ordered it, but today I'm just going to make one because I have the right stuff. This is 1-inch tubing, 0.120 wall, and check this out. It slips right on there. It's a tight fit, and there's absolutely no friction, no wiggle either. It is a perfect slip fit for this. So what we're going to do is we are going to fashion a steering support that will straighten this out and get rid of this ball. So we will have a fixed angle, unfortunately, and no options for adjustment up or down, but that hasn't been a problem in the past, so I'm not too worried about it. But it's going to be cool to make this, so let's get it done. This is like a 4 3/4, 4.5 section, just to let you know what I'm starting with. This is just out of my scrap pile from making A-arms. I make my A-arms out of 1-inch 120. All right, so I've got some 1/8-inch thick, 1.5-inch wide flat bar, and all I'm going to do, this is for the bracket, is measure 4 inches. Half of 4 is 2, and we're going to drill an 1-inch wide hole in it. So halfway through would be a 1/2 inch, but I can't put my bit there, so So I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch in and mark it there for the punch. That will make our hole saw work a lot better. All right, so now I'll just get a scrap piece of 1.25 inches because that's what it's being mounted to. I'll get my custom made brackets. And I'll lay in my 1 inch. Now I want to make sure that it's square. I think a good eyeball will be good enough for this application. And I want to make sure the bracket is snug against the vise. I have it clamped in about halfway up. And I'm leaving one side sticking out more than the other. I think that'll work just fine. All right, so now let's reconfigure for our new setup. I cut this tab loose. We should be able to reuse it. All right, so here's our bracket. Slide that in. Man, that's just nice. Now we are free to position this. So it looks like we cut it a little wide. You can probably see it from there. This is running into our cross member, so it's just a little wide. No big deal. We'll take that off real quick. All right, we've got our corner lopped off. Let's drop this in here. Now theoretically, we could just set the angle where we want it here. Wow. So this small shaft here has eliminated the need for an intermediate, which is awesome. Look at that, tons of authority. Tons of authority, and I even tacked that intermediate shaft support on. Oh, I like it. I like it. We're calling it good. So, now that we changed our bracket, our steering wheel is too high. Steering wheel's way up here, which is right in our line of sight. And I want it to be down here, which is 1.5 inches lower. But we're just going to use the dash core support and drop it down 1.5 inches. And steering will be right where we want it. And it's super sturdy. The only thing wiggling is this bar. So if this bar were sturdy, this wouldn't wiggle at all. It would be so solid. Oh, it's exciting. I'm so glad this worked out. Let's drop it down, finish this up. All right, so let's have a look at the handiwork. We have no intermediate shaft support, which I like a lot. It's simpler. And let's turn left. Oh, it turns so easily. It turns so easily. There's no binding. Now, if you see the camber coming up on the front wheels, it's because the drive shafts aren't in there. The drive shafts are what pins that bearing together. And I'm going to rebuild the hubs. I got new bearings, which is the next episode, is rebuilding the front end and finalizing it. Now that we've got our steering geometry, we've got our rack mounted where it's going to be, we've got our shafts, steering wheels, steering supports, dash support in, we can finalize that front end. The geometry might change just a hair with the new bearings and the solid front end setup. Hindsight, I could have just rebuilt the bearings before I did the front end, and it would have probably turned out all right, but why not revisit all of this stuff? So next episode is the revisit of the front end, Oh, this feels good. This feels really, really good. Oh, I like it. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.